Yo, what up, everyone? I guess I decided to start early because looks like my Discord's popping. So, you know what? I'll take questions from the crowd today. So, anything you guys want to ask me about, like, my interview experience, my job at Apple, my past, yeah, I guess my past career, life in general, or whatever have you. I'm available now. We do have my client starting at 9 p.m. We will do a replay analysis for him as well for his coding interview. As well, and just remind you, he is going for the L3, L4 level. And so part of his replay analysis will be on the system design. But I will also judge his leak code practice diary as well. To recap kind of like what's been going on in the past week and the past streams. On Tuesday, I did see that one of my clients did not have the right attitude for solving leak code questions. He wasn't like super obsessed about being ultra competent at the coding interview and solving every single problem, and this led me to rage quit the stream. And really to just say, hey, you need to spend some time on your own doing exactly what I asked, because he had a lot of issues with, not doing what I had written on a sheet. And so this is not that client, but I'm just kind of recapping you what happened throughout the week. So if you guys have questions, throw it in this chat right now, and I will answer them. I guess to kick off the discussion, I got a few questions about like what it's like interviewing at Apple and what my take on it is. So yeah, I would say that in general, my interview at Apple was the result of luck, but I would also say that luck favors the prepared. How do I describe this? Like the more chances you try at a problem, the better you're gonna, or at least a interview, the better you're gonna have, the better shot you're gonna have of actually landing that, because the first one is almost always the hardest, right? So getting like, if you're a new grad and you really want like a job from Google, well, Google has a bunch of new grads applying, so you're competing in a sea of like millions, arguably. Or, well, I should say thousands. And so my interview at Apple was like I said in that video, was probably the worst one. But it was also the one that was probably the best suited for me, because at the time I didn't really do much leak code or grokking. I was really just I didn't really have all the resources that you guys have. And this is like in 2015, 2016. And so they tested me on things that were, some of them were from the book, other of them were like more like coding exercises. So for instance, I remember getting a question about Dijkstra's algorithm, multi-threading, and also doing some pair programming refactoring as well. And so I think that it was, and I remember that they gave me a beta version of their Beats app or Apple Music app, and they asked me what I thought about it, and I described like all the different components in it that I would have written using native Android components, and describing how I might test it and pointing out a lot of the bugs that they had. I think that was really the thing that clinched it for me. And it was definitely a unique experience for sure. But if you ask me to repeat that one, I don't know if I could do it. If I travel back in time with the knowledge that I had, I don't know if I could do it again. Now knowing what I know now, obviously I think I would be able to repeat that result. So I guess the moral of the story there is that, yeah, Apple is a company that hires on its own team basis and hires on what they need, right? But that also leads it to the most random as well. So it's a very hit or miss situation, but chances are if you're very highly competent in whatever area that they need you to be in, or in general, they will hire you. I think that's really what you should take away from that experience. Yeah, in the meantime, I'll wait for you guys' questions. In the meantime, I guess we'll go through some hacker news. We'll go through some hacker news stuff, I guess. How did you manage school prep at the same time? So that's funny because I was actually doing three things at the same time. I was doing school, work, and prep. So the thing is that when I first started out at school, I had to put myself through school, right? So I was working while going there. And so actually, you know what? I guess while we're doing this, here, let me put on some Dota while you guys are yeah, so you guys are looking at at least something while I'm talking about this. Ooh. Let's check out some great Southeast Asia Dota. Yeah. So I guess during the time I was at school, I actually had to put myself through school, right? And so a lot of it was me working, spending time working while going to school. And so because of that, I basically had gotten to a point that I didn't actually, attend classes regularly. I had to keep working. I was working a full-time job. And so I couldn't afford the 2-3 hour round trip commute to school just to attend one class. If I was going to go to school, it was because I would go all day for like 3-4 classes. And so managing all that was insanely difficult, but I had gotten to a point where I could teach myself the material. And so really for me, my days kind of ended up being morning, work from like, I would say 10 till 1 p.m., eat some meal prep that I had done, and then like 1:30 to 2ish, I would like study or go to class or something like that. I always tried to pick afternoon classes if I could help it. And then in the evening from like 5 till 9, I would study for my interviews. And then from 9 p.m. till like midnight, I'd probably play some games. And then from midnight to 2 a.m., I would work again. So eventually I basically ended up on this like 8 hours of work, 4 hours of school, and then kind of like another 3-4 hours of studying for leak code. Or yeah, we had leak code back then, but it wasn't like as well known, and how to use it wasn't actually as well understood. So hopefully that answers your question. I mostly just got super efficient at my time and just started skipping classes. I don't recommend everyone do this, especially if you cannot teach yourself. If you can't teach yourself, I don't recommend skipping school at all. But I kind of realized, the only reason I'm going to school and attending lectures is because I'm super paranoid that I might miss something. But I kind of figured that, with these classes, I am only learning from the textbook anyway, and I'm teaching myself anyway. I don't need to go to the lectures. So, what are the pros of joining Google over Uber? Mostly the engineering challenges are going to be different. When you're first starting out, I would argue the experience is going to be mostly the same. If we're talking about like total compensation or skipping that conversation about total compensation, that's a whole different thing. But the engineering process is going to be roughly the same whether you're Uber or Google at that level, at L3, L4, I would say. Mostly because the whole process is very formalized, and doing an engineer review document, fixing bugs and all that stuff. It's pretty universal. But after like L4 and L5 level, your engineering problems actually do become a significant challenge. So let me give you an example. So Google has famously a monorepo, but that monorepo is actually composite of every single other repo in the company. So for instance, the iOS apps that they have are going to live in the same repo as the Android apps. But at Uber, the entire code base is used to build their rider app, their driver app, and everything else. This is at least talking from the mobile perspective. And so because of that, you actually end up with an entire engineering challenge that is completely different, because these diffs and features might end up overriding each other. And so you actually end up with an entirely different engineering challenge. So it's at that level, it's really the compensation and the I would say the type of engineering challenges you're facing that's going to be different. On top of that, Uber is still small enough where you can actually still have a very sizable impact. So for me, one of the projects that I did was migrating our entire code base from Java 8 to Java 11. Now, that's not something that they would normally entrust like an L5 engineer at Google. I'm sure they'd give it to like a high L5, low L6 as well. And plus, because the risk factor is relatively small, there's not as much surface area to change. So really, at that level, the total compensation starts changing and it starts mattering. Especially if you look at levels.fyi, you might be hitting like 100,000 refreshers every single year for Google, whereas with Uber, you might be hitting 150 to 200 at the L5 level. Whereas on the L3 level, you might be only looking at 40,000 versus like 35,000, something very, very minor. And so don't get me wrong, over time that will matter, but like in the first 3-4 years of your career, it's a non-thing, Imagine getting promoted 1 year early, in the right circumstances and learning the right things in engineering. That extra 5 or 10K that you were talking about early on in the year or early on in your career doesn't actually matter anymore. So what's more important is that you go to a team and a company that you believe in and that you believe that will teach you the right things and to become a successful engineer. You're not playing for the next 2-3 years. You're playing for the next 5-10 years in your career. I think that's the most healthy way to think about it if you are just starting off. Did you already answer the question about applying to Fang 6 months to 1 year outside of undergrad? No, I didn't. So if you're applying to Fang 6 months to 1 year outside of undergrad, I would say get like a some experience under your belt. And then apply for an L3 position and get a mid L3 level. I think that's basically the way to play it. Like I said, the first few years of your career, or even the first year of your career, it's very formative. And so it's really important that you learn from the right people and from the right team that in that company, because you can find brilliant engineers anywhere. The question is, what company are they at, and if you can even find them. So I was curious about me wanting a lower level at Google over Uber. So yeah, at the time I would have said that if you gave me a mid L4 offer at Google on the Android team versus an L5 offer for like the finance and banking team, the mobile banking team at Uber, I would have said give me the L4 offer at Google. The first reason is because I really wanted to work on Android. I've been doing it for like almost like 8-10 years now. And at this point, it would have been amazing to actually work on a framework that I've been using for so long. And on top of that, I knew that Google was one of my dream companies to ever have work for. It's on my list for sure. And even today, it's still my list. But the only reason I picked Uber was because out of like all the offers I had, I felt that Uber was going to give me the best shot at improving my engineering skills. That's mostly the way I saw it. Like when I first joined Uber, I had the intention of joining for like 1-2 years and then going to somewhere else, because especially if the opportunities that were given to me weren't sufficient for me. But fortunately for me, I found a team that I really liked and respected, and so I kind of want to see myself like sticking it out for the long haul there. And I learned a lot from them on a daily basis. And so for me, again, I'm still playing for like 5-10 years out in my career. Like I'm 28, there's still plenty of runway for me in my engineering career. So I'm still investing in myself at this point. And so if I found the right team and I found the right people to work with, then the compensation at switching and getting bigger compensation doesn't really matter that much to me. I read some online reviews about EPI and people said the solution explanations weren't the best. Is that true? Are they that hard to understand? I think they're hard to understand, but you really need to put the time in to really understand what you're looking at and why they came up with the solutions. I think most people who really say that are people who are expecting, oh yeah, if you read this explanation, you'll totally understand why we got it. But that's not the way you read EPI. The way you read EPI is you really need to understand like the progression that they take from like a naive solution to an optimal one to a good compact solution. Let me give you an example here. Let's pull like a random ass solution from like a chapter, right? So let's say that we have like this is from the API, right? Let's say we have an interval problem, right? They define the intervals up here, and then they have this like, I would say relatively nice compact code, right? And then they give you like the time complexity is tricky to analyze, blah, blah, blah. But you can see here the code is very compact, nice looking, and easy to read. This is like the gold standard for what you should produce in your interview. And then of course, like they say here, like the brute force approach would be to perform a traversal of the binary search tree and record the trees, blah, blah, blah. The brute force, and this is like the shortcoming of the brute force approach. Now, and then you can use, and here's the optimization, and they explain it here. Now, this is the exact same kind of thing that you should be doing in your interviews. Proposing the naive brute force solution and then asking yourself what the inefficiencies are in order to grow your naive solution to an optimal one. Now, of course, this does take some brain power to, figure out like, oh, why are they doing this? Can't I actually, like, why am I not understanding it? And this is why I think most people really say, oh, it's not the best. I think it's the best based on all the resources that I've seen out there. Everyone says cracking the coding interview is great, but the fact of the matter is that it just teaches the basics that you can find in any coding interview book. Like your college textbook is going to be better than cracking the coding interview. But this level of thinking of being able to grow your solution from the naive to optimal is really what you should be aiming for. So this is why I think Elements of Programming interview is absolutely the best. And this is me just pulling some random problem in the book. I don't even know what this problem is asking, but the style in which they present their solution should be the style in which I think any competent candidate can actually present themselves. Not only that, this is the same way you're going to approach the engineering process when you're an actual engineer. So getting good habits in the interview is going to get you, at least when you're studying, is going to get you good habits in your career, and vice versa. It's almost like the coding interview is a actual indicator of how good you are as an engineer. Fancy that. I mean, wouldn't you agree? If you saw an engineer who could propose the naive solution, explain how you go from the naive to optimal solution in a logical manner, and then prove to you it works, and then write some really clean, compact code, isn't that like the hallmark of like, hey, I might be working with a actual competent engineer? I would say so. So, you know, give it a shot. It's kind of complicated, of course, but I would say take the time to really understand and read what they're saying. It's not easy to read, of course. It's not. You know, leak code is just going to spit you out a answer, and then that's that, right? And then you might be thinking, oh yeah, I need to understand how this works right off the bat. But really look at the whole step-by-step. Why did they say, why is the brute force explanation like correct? And can we get to something better? So really take your time with this. That's my recommendation. If you're expecting the optimal solution to really explain to you things in a self-contained way, you're going about it the whole wrong way. Yeah, I mean, you can go to YouTube and look up another explanation, but it might not be the same answer. So, you know, there's multiple different ways of solving this, of solving a lot of these questions and answers. But the thing is that you're missing the point if you're just trying to understand the optimal solution. It's about growing your solution from naive to optimal. Hey, Edbert, just started a new job next month. What would you suggest I focus on if I want to become a better engineer? Read books on how to become a professional engineer. I have a video on like the top 5 books that I read when I was becoming a professional engineer, and what I did to actually, to actually, you know, think in terms of a proper professional engineer. Here, let me link you the book, the video. I think it's worth reading. And all these books that I'm recommending, I still have them. And I've shown them many times on the stream before. So let me actually send you this. So yeah, I'll link it in the chat. But this is the video here. The books for fast software engineering career growth, right? So this is the book. This is the video that I would recommend. And I think for every single book you read here, really, really take notes. Let me show you something. Like, for instance, one of the books that I recommend is called Clean Code. And I still break this open from time to time, you know, at least for the mechanical stuff. So, like, let me show you. Like this entire freaking notebook is full of notes that I took on when I was actually, reading it. So, you know what I mean? Like, you really need to take this seriously. Like, really take notes on it, understand it. Dedicate, like, 1 hour of your day to just reading material and taking notes on it. I think it's absolutely super underrated. But in 6 months, you'll see a dramatically big difference. You'd love to know what it's like to work with me. Holy shit. I'm going to tell you, it's not pleasant. If you're better than me, it's like, I'm going to fuck up so many times until I get it right, you know? But that's the learning process. But if you work under me, I'm going to hold you to a very high standard. I expect you to give it like 110%. I'll say like, I have been guilty of getting to points where my manager has literally had to pull me into side meetings and tell me not to do certain things. I will admit this. But it's mostly because I demand that everyone I work with really gives it their all and really tries their best to make a good effort to do their work, you know, in a competent manner. And I get super mad when people don't try. And I'll say there was one incident where someone called me in to their Saturday meeting. And this is someone I was working with who was like lower level than me. He called me into a Saturday meeting at 8 p.m. in order to help him get his stuff done. And he was a back-end engineer. And so I thought it was unreasonable for me to have to help him like that because it's not an area I'm familiar with, right? But you know what? I was the lead on the project. It's my responsibility to deliver it. I can help him out. That's my mentality going in. It's like, it might not be my fault, but it's my responsibility, especially if I want to get the assignment done. You know, and my manager and everyone is not going to accept it if I say, oh, well, this person couldn't get his work done, therefore I'm not delivering the project. No, that's not how this works. I'm responsible if I'm the lead. And so he showed up 45 minutes late to his own meeting that he pulled me into. And I got super mad at him. I yelled at him, told him never to do that again, and I told him he was disrespecting me. And then he reported that to my manager. And apparently, you know, that's the wrong way to handle things. I'll admit this, you know. Because it's not the nice way, you know, it creates a lot of, a lot of friction, and, you know, it's not, I'm going to say, don't do this. But, you know, like, at the time, I was, like, super mad. Well, I'm giving up my weekend to help this guy do some work that he should be able to do on his own. So, you know, whatever, it happened. But that's, like, kind of what it's like to work with me. I demand a lot from people. And I demand, like, their absolute best. If you're not giving me your best, I will be very mad at you. So, what is the regular difference between mid L3 and regular L3? Oh, and I would say the difference, not much. Let's actually open up levels.fyi, and I'll give you a solid example. In fact, my salary was on the low end, and the only reason it got, like, to medium to high is because it's Apple. Apple appreciates a lot. So let's actually bust open levels.fyi for a second here. So let's say, like, if you're a junior ICT3, you're going to get, like, a $55,000 in stock on average with a $15,000 sign-on bonus, right? And so your total compensation is $219,000 for ICT3. Let's say, well, actually, this is not a good example. Let's actually compare Google, Facebook, and then maybe something like Uber. I would say, let's do this because it's a little bit more apples-to-apples comparison. No pun intended, but yeah. So Google will give you $191, right? With $40,000 of stock and $20,000 bonus, and a base salary of $132. If we compare this to Uber, like average is like a little bit lower, but I think this number is a little bit outdated. Yeah, this number is actually pretty outdated. I think they're more generous with their stock grants and bonuses now. But this band might be like really high. But yeah, I would say this around a 130, 140 salary. Yeah, 130 salary for an L3 is going to be the norm. And expect about $40,000 of stock each year and then $20,000 bonus. Of course, when you're talking about Uber and a more risky company, let's say like Airbnb, right? You think younger companies, they're going to be a lot more, yeah, this is what I expected. They're going to be a lot more generous with their stock grants and their bonuses because the company is not like super blue chip like for Fang and everything else. Even in like the Microsoft level, let's say like you're at the upper band here, they give you a lot less stock. This is like what you expect. So with like Airbnb and like, I would say Robinhood as well, I think. Their leveling is going to be a lot more generous with the stock. You get like almost 50% more stock, but that vests over 4 years. So effectively, this $20,000 difference becomes $5,000 difference year to year. So to me, that's a nothing burger. It's like, what's $5,000 before tax? What's $5,000 per year before tax, you know? Let's say you take the full amount, like assume that you stacks, right? $20,000. What's $20,000 in the grand scheme of things? 10%? Yeah, I mean, it's going to look like a lot of money to you right now. But when you get up to the L5, if you could get promoted to the L5 level, like, and make $400K, how much is 10K, 20K going to make? What's the difference? You know? If you could get promoted a year earlier by learning the right things, it doesn't really matter what happens at the L3 level. So stop focusing on total compensation at the junior level. Focus on learning the right things. What's the best way to land interviews at Fang? Find recruiters on LinkedIn or referrals or apply to the front door? For me, I would say the best way, like the way I did it was I reached out to recruiters cold on LinkedIn. I think that's the best way to do it because, you know, Fang is always hiring. But if it doesn't hurt to find, to get referrals, to be honest. I think that personal referrals from past coworkers is almost always the best. But I assume that you're a like L3 engineer who is new grad, so you're not going to have that power. So the next best thing for you would be to reach out to recruiters. So let's see. Do you think having a master's in CS without any experience is okay? Having a chance to land a job in Fang? Yeah. I think one of my clients, and this is one of my earliest clients, she got the highest L3 level possible, like L3 at Google, and got like the second highest score at Google, and all she had was a master's degree. Let me link you that video. I think it's a really good interview to watch. I think I uploaded her coaching session, but let me show you the video actually. Second highest. Yeah. This one. Yeah. So this one, post interview reflections with the student who got second highest Google offer, right? I'll link it in the chat. This one is like me talking to that person about her interview experience, how she did problem solving, her approach to interview, and yeah, this burnout and support section I think is very relevant to some people. I think that they should. I think if you want to know what it takes to really succeed as a new grad, I think this is an amazing post-interview reflection to watch. I think she spills a lot of gems. I think you guys would really appreciate like learning everything you can from this. There's a lot of topics we cover here, right? The candidate background, interview experience, studying and problem solving, performance reflection, approach to the interview, leak code, burnout and support, opinion of post-interview write-ups. I think all this is relevant. I think you guys should watch this one. Because it shows you that you can be a new grad and literally get like one of the highest offers on levels.fyi. It's absolutely possible, and I've shown here that I can make this possible with any client. Do I have any videos on negotiating salary? Honestly, I will say that negotiating salary is one of my worst traits. I literally would tell you at a basic level, get better offers, get as many offers as you can, and go and get as many offers as you can, play them against each other. Although I think that there are many interviewing negotiation services that are out there. I think most people should take advantage of that because as engineers, we spend most of our time writing code and fixing bugs and doing our, day-to-day tasks. Negotiating, like with our salary, is not something that we're very well experienced with. So these negotiation services, they will actually do the negotiating for you. And they will actually go ahead and they'll do all the heavy lifting. These are past recruiters and HR people who will actually talk to they'll tell you what emails to craft. They'll work with you in order to get higher offers. For instance, Valid, and I'll upload the chat I had with him tomorrow, and he went from an L3 to an L5 with just 4 years of experience as one of my long-term clients. He actually ended up negotiating, I think, over 30%, getting a 30% higher offer just off the strength of getting 3 L5 offers from Box, Tesla, and NerdWallet, and playing those off each other, and then negotiating with Box for that higher offer. So a 30% upside is really good. So don't care if they take like 5-10%. It doesn't matter. If you can get 30% more, it's fucking fantastic. Does an L4 need to be a lead to get an L5, or are there other offers to focus on to get an L5? Look at the Square Engineering ladder. There's many of other things that you can do to become an L5. Many other things. As long as you're like technically competent and a very, very good expert in your area of work, you're gonna be fine. You're gonna get promoted. How do you improve on your problem solving skills if you ever get asked a question you've never seen on LeetCode? I mean, I've answered this question in many coaching sessions. Just learn how to do problem solving like properly. I've done this in a guide. My guide actually has this. Hold up. I literally talk about this. How and then like in my coaching sessions as well. This is how you actually, and most of my coaching sessions are geared towards actually becoming a more competent problem solver. So with that, let me actually bring on my client. I think it's time to do a replay analysis with him. So let me bring him in.
Recording in progress.
Okay, let's see. Let's see if he shows up. Hold up, is he here? Hold up. the hell, man? He should be here. Come on, man. Let me send him an email. I don't know what's going on. Oh, did he respond? Yep. Okay. Okay, he says in the Zoom link. Ah, there we go. There we go. Hey, what up?
Hey, what's up, Edbert?
Hey, doing good, doing good. How are you?
I'm good. It's just been, I didn't get to practice much in the past few days because work has been, shit kind of went down, and we were also trying to put in a lot of changes before the code freeze.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it starts this weekend for us. But I was able to, I did take out like 2 to 3 hours yesterday just to do the homework question you gave me.
Yep.
And I also told the senior engineer that I meet with one-on-one during our one-on-one yesterday. I told him like, hey, I'm gonna do this practice question and I'm just gonna share it in the doc, and when you have time, like, can you go take a look and give me some comments. But I last checked like a few minutes ago. It didn't seem like he looked at it yet. So but I'll let you know when he does look at it.
Cool.
And give me his comments. But yeah, in general, like I do also have a lot of questions regarding like system design, and in terms of like how should I practice and like how should I prepare for it and stuff like that. I think yeah.
Okay, so go ahead, ask away.
Okay, so I think like the reason I took, like, initially I was thinking like, okay, I'm gonna try the Tinder question and spend like maybe like 45 minutes, like just like how like a system design interview would take.
Yep.
But then as I saw that, I was pretty lost because like I wasn't sure like how far I should go and like what areas I should cover. Like, because even when I do the more product focused system design questions with the engineer, yep, he always does like kind of lead me into like, okay, can you like, you know, he would lead me to talk about certain things that he wants to kind of judge on, but without someone to, like, an interviewer to kind of guide me towards like certain directions. I wasn't sure like where I should go, if that makes sense. So I was like, okay, there are like infinite things I could talk about. So I think that's where I got kind of stuck on. So I just kind of like, I had a lot of back and forths with like what I was writing, and then I ended up with a lot of answers related to the product itself, and then I have some general like answer regarding how the data model would look like and how the components would interact with each other. But I also didn't go like very deep into each of those. Also, like the other part of me was also, because I'm writing these in the document, I also don't want the engineer to, you know, I don't want to ask him to look at like a 5-6 page Google Doc. So I was also trying to keep that in mind.
Just copy paste the answer, but I see what you're saying.
I have it in the Google Doc. Yeah, I basically just like, I think you had that page where it's a Tinder question. I basically have like a two page plus answer, and yeah, like the other question I have is also, as I'm going through DDIA, because I've not finished DDIA yet, right? Like I may not have like a very solid understanding of certain topics. For example, distributed systems like problems, or like, you know, it could be replication. I just finished the chapter, but like I'm not sure if I should be actively practicing, or should I like do more, like read more before I actually start practicing. And the also other question I have is, I could do a screen share later and show you like the system design course I bought. It also has like example practice questions, and that come with clarifying questions that I could ask, as well as a video that the person did. So I was wondering like how, like if you think like that would be something I could utilize in a certain way to help me prep for the system design interview.
Okay, I'm going to tell you right now, you're aiming at too many different things. Let's start address your concerns first by one step at a time.
Okay, sure.
The difference between the product design, system design interview and a normal system design interview is that the product is going to be mostly focused on actually writing a product, you know? And so when, like, for example, the Tinder question or the Facebook newsfeed question, like, and we want to internationalize it, what are the problems that we are going to experience? Those dimensions are going to be vastly different from how to actually scale a database, or, you know, how do we design LinkedIn for 1 million users? Those are going to be two fundamentally different questions. Why? Well, for, let's say we internationalize Facebook newsfeed, chances are we might not actually have to run into the issue of sharding a database. You know, we might not have to start talking about load balancers necessarily. And most engineers do not deal with this on a normal everyday basis. And so focusing on that is not going to be likely part of the product system design. And similarly, with the your product system design, that's not necessarily going to affect your the actual system, the normal system design. Why? Because the architecture of the code base doesn't really have that much bearing on like the technicals of underneath, right? A NoSQL versus MySQL database. Your architecture in general does not necessarily care up to a point, you know? Of course, there's going to be some point where your choice of database and how you arrange it is going to affect your architecture and how you create those microservices. But that's besides the point. What I'm trying to explain here is that you're trying to go for two completely different system designs and you're studying two different things at once. And that's going to lead to a lot of the confusion that you're seeing today. And so you need to make a decision right now. Are you going to do the product design or are you going to do a normal system design?
Yeah, I'm probably gonna do the product design one, but I get your point. I think I was just like trying to take up too much at the same time, and so it kind of led me in two different directions, which caused the whole confusion when I was trying to do your homework question.
Correct. So let's look at your homework. Let's see how you actually answer this question. So and remember, we talked about last time, what are the you have a base state, right? You have the minimum viable product, and then you have these levers, these different inputs that will change different outputs, right? In this case, the input is what your audience is. Instead of going from a US-based audience in like your Facebook example, the question asks you to internationalize it. So that's like a change in the input, right? So the question is, in the product itself, what changes in it in order to correspond to that? And we talked about this, not just with strings, but with privacy, with data handling, and a bunch of other factors, like content and how you display things to users as well. So these are all the things that I tried to gear you towards. So I really hope that you took this to heart and really tried to act on that. Okay. So just okay, so you do explanations and clarifications, right? So you have two core features, swiping and chatting. I think this is absolutely fine. Yes. On the feed section.
Do you want me? Sorry. Do you want me to talk to them, or do you want to read through them?
I'm gonna read through it. I'm gonna ask you questions, and yeah, like give me some time because I don't need you to talk through it. As long as you wrote everything here, that's kind of the point, you know. Main tab user has one user list users one by one deck. Sure. The second tab shows the users who have liked, but almost all of them will be censored, unavailable to unidentified. Yeah. So the user doesn't know whether or not these users have liked him or not. On the chat section, once they match, the two users will be able to chat. Other features in the app will include... Okay, so right now you're just talking about the UI. But the thing is that I want you to like try to think about like what the underlying architecture might look like. So for instance, what does the payload to the end user look like if we're sending it like across the web? Like for let's say we send a list of 30 users. Are these liked data going to be inside the payload or not? In the chat session, what does the chat API look like? How might the backend actually create these chat sessions? What does the software architecture look like? I want you to think about this.
Okay, because I think that was the other thing I was also not sure about, because in a typical product focused question, I would obviously dive into like, okay, we have the chatting feature. Now, how are the users going to chat with each other? How do you initiate the conversation once two of them have matched? Like, well, how does the backend like deal with that change and update? But then like the question was also more on like, okay, we are trying to upsell or introduce subscription and memberships. So I was like, okay, do I still dive into this chatting feature because it's not really changing? And I think that's where the other confusion I had, because I was like, okay, I want to focus on the membership subscription, but it also feels like I should dive into these components that are not
going to be changing. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. That was all.
You bring up a good point. Yes. What should you focus on something that is not being subject to change? Well, it's a hard question, because until you explore the feature, you don't actually know. You don't know, like, if you're changing one feature from one state to another, right? Growing it, in this case, adding the subscription, it's not immediately clear if it should change. But you should still be able to do this exercise regardless. Let's say the interviewer is having a bad day and he says, well, what do you think the architecture might look like right now? You should be able to do this. So I would do it for the sake of homework. Do it as far as completeness. But when it comes to the actual interview, keep it in the back of your mind and be able to execute on it. Just be on this. So I'd like to, like, after this, coach, after today, I want you to at least try to, you know, think about this in the future and do it for future problems. It might not ever come up, but you need to be prepared to talk about it and justify why you might think certain architecture decisions are being made. Does this make sense?
Yes, yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
Perfect. Let's move on. What you think the subscriptions look like? Great. So you think they might be tiered. All right, that's fine. You know, the interviewer might say yes or no. Member, subscriber, sure. Each subscription lasts for a month. Okay.
Yeah.
Or you can say X amount of time.
Yeah. The other thing was also, like, you know, in the typical interview setting, I have the interviewer to kind of clarify some of my assumptions or questions, but in that case I didn't, so I just wrote down the assumptions that I had.
I think that's fine. But I would also, like, when you're done with it, critique yourself. What dimensions in the product are likely to change? So, for instance, one thing that might be likely to change is the duration of the subscription. It might not last for a month. It might be an annual subscription, you know, that's discounted or something like that. Okay, for simplicity, we'll consider these as advantages for now. And it's more like if I had to change along this dimension, what does that look like? I think that's a really important question to ask yourself. So, number of super likes is increased. Yep. So,
can you clarify a little more on that? Like, what do you mean by change on a dimension, along a dimension?
So what I mean by this is that you've assumed that the duration of the subscription is static. You've assumed that we might have 3 tiers. And so these are like 2 static assumptions. Those are the dimensions I'm talking about. What in the product might change? Well, we can have 4 tiers. We can have different number. It might not even be tiers. It might, the duration of the subscription might be longer. It might change. We might want it to be like only a day, you know? And so that's what I'm talking about. What is reasonable to change in a product? And the easiest way to do this is to ask yourself, is to actually just use the product, you know, like Tinder. Download Tinder for a hot second and say, hey, what's changed since the last time I used it? What did I decide to scale against? And, you know, it's a great way to actually, like, expose yourself to or at least it's a great way to expose yourself to these different exercises and these different products that might actually change on a regular basis. So that's really what I'm trying to get you to do, to like really reflect on your own work. Like, it's really important. Like, not just reflect on your own work, but learn from what you are reflecting on. And so upselling, So upselling, you consider after free trials, UI. Okay, great. That's fine. You're considering the different dimensions of what the subscription and memberships might look like. Fine. You assume that you didn't previously require payments, so you need to integrate. Yeah, this is fine. This kind of goes back to, like, hey, be able to come up with what you think the software architecture looks like. So it's just a how to describe it? It's like a subset of that. Like, it derives from that. If you can come up with the basic architecture, you can come up with what you think will change, what you think won't change. Does that make sense?
I can come up with the basic architecture. I can then kind of derive what I think will change and what will not change.
Correct. So, for instance, if you had, like, created like you said in the beginning, you said that there's going to be a main tab of a deck of users and a chat, right? Yeah. And up to this point, you've assumed it's free. So you don't actually have to define a payment service provider architecture or stream just yet.
Yep.
So that's what I mean. Like, it's because you assumed that in the architecture. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Data models will change. Yep, because you need to have payment information. Okay. Well, then the question, like, how do you store that? Fine. With payments involved, might ensure application security is good enough. Yep. Good. You are thinking about the payment as well. Oh, data models as well. How does that? Okay, then integrate that with the actual architecture that exists today. You know. So for instance, will the fact that our subscriptions have these super likes and news features affect what we see in chat? Will it affect how we see people's likes? Do we want to show users have super likes them? You know, It's like knowing like what levers they affect in a way. And then once you know what levers they affect, then you can say what under in the architecture will change. So you need to so yeah, that's what I'm going to say. You say offer free trials, more UI changes for acting on a subscription, can see their likes increase. You can see other users who have liked the user. Yes. So things like this, like, hey, we can see these current users. So then you see what the corresponding changes. And I don't want you to get hung up on these data model changes. Like, you've done a good job of recognizing the components as well. So let me actually, not enough of my rambling, let me actually dive into what you've actually written.
Okay.
So user entity, stores a payment info object. Okay, yeah, it could be a reference to a payment info object. It could be like a separate entity.
Yeah.
Sure. One-to-end relationships. Good. I like how complete you are with this. Subscriptions, tier, enum. Yeah, it's a trial. Say start time. And then the next question would be like these different fields that you have. This kind of goes back to like what dimensions of the project are likely to change. You need to justify that. Say, hey, well, the number of tiers might increase. You know.
Yeah.
So it's like.
Yeah, that's why I chose an enum, because we can obviously add more values into the enum. I knew I kind of wrote out that static silver, platinum, and golden, but I didn't really have the idea that I want to keep it static. That's why I have this enum, which is subject to change. So I guess in the future I shouldn't write out any static assumptions. Is that right?
Yes and no, because the reason, and this gets into a very interesting conversation. So it's like, why not make everything dynamic, right?
Yeah.
The problem is that everyone shoots themselves in the foot with it, because, you know, it takes time for information to propagate. Not everyone's going to know the entire context. In fact, like if you ask someone, hey, why do we have, and I'm sure you've run into this before, like, hey, why does this component exist? People shrug their shoulders and says, I don't know. It's like, can we change it? It's like, no, it's like, no, we don't even know what it does, you know? It's like, but it says we can change it. It's like, no, but we don't know what it does. You know what I mean? So the point here is that if something can be changed, it will be changed. So if like for instance, would you want to make the start time static or dynamic? You would want to make it static because once the user has made the subscription, you probably don't want to necessarily change it willy-nilly unless you have something else. You know what I mean? Like it shouldn't be manually changed. It should be changed by some other component. So it's like it's like knowing along what dimensions you should restrict user freedom on. So you need to justify that. Why would we give developers or users the power to change X? You know, because if something can change, something will change. That's the danger, and that's something that you need to be able to justify and appreciate. Does that make sense?
So I get the first part where you say if something can change, something will change. But I don't think I fully understand what you mean by I need to justify it. So by justify, do you mean I have to account for it, or?
For example, like if you said tiers and enum, right? And you told me it's because we want to add more tiers or different types of subscriptions.
Yeah.
That's a justification. Because I could have asked you, why not just say true or false? Why or even this? Why is trial a separate boolean instead of a tier? This is the justification of what I'm talking about.
Okay. So basically you mean that so justification is like I gotta explain why I made certain decisions, right? Now how does that tie back to if something can change, something will change, and I have to justify that? So
this ties back. Go ahead.
No, I'm just kind of failing to fully understand what you mean by on that relationship between these two statements.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. So let me see if I can illustrate this with an example. So let's say, for instance, like you remember the Robinhood infinite money glitch, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the difference is that both Robinhood options chain and Robinhood stock platform basically had the power to read the credit account, but didn't understand whether the credit was Robinhood's own money or the user's money, right? So both of these had the power to change the account balance, right? But they both had the power to change it improperly. So what happened is that they both made changes improperly. Now, if they had actually thought ahead and designed things properly, they would have thought of this change and added like maybe a field saying is credit or is from user.
Okay.
So that's what I mean. Like if something can change, if something will change for better or worse. And each design decision, whether it's an omission or an addition, serves a purpose for a particular reason. And you need to come up with that reason. Does that make sense?
Okay, that makes sense. And so yeah, like you said, everything can be added or anything could be removed. And for everything that I want to add or I decide to add or remove, I have to justify that decision. Is that what you mean? Okay.
Yes. Everything you do, every little piece of what you decide to add in a code base or remove in a code base has to have a proper justification. Whether it's because of something that is happening today or something that might happen that can reasonably happen in the future.
Okay.
So, I don't worry. I understand where you're coming from with like oh yeah, why can't everything just be flexible? You know, because if it's flexible, then we don't have to worry about it, and we can change if it comes up. But this is also a lack of thinking. Like remember the Robin Hood money glitch? Oh hey, we made everything flexible and easy to use. You know. And you let someone YOLO $50,000 on Apple puts.
Yeah.
So it's like recognizing and understanding that incidents can happen because developers were given like so much power and not enough knowledge to work with it. So component wise, backend will continue a preloaded use of users. So open the app, user swipes, list gets below a certain threshold, loads data. Yes, so this is asynchronous. So you're talking about an asynchronous, what's it called? Asynchronous call, right?
Yeah.
So this is what, you want to like be a little bit more technical with it. So asynchronous loading of users, right? So this is fine. So right now you're talking about the end clients.
Yeah.
So I want you to start labeling like what part of the system these are dealing with. So are you dealing with the client? Are you dealing with the server? Are you dealing with some component inside the architecture of the server, et cetera, et cetera?
Okay.
So yeah, make sure you're taking notes on everything I'm talking about because I'm talking about a lot of things right now.
Yeah, I noticed there were like some stuff that I like wanted to take note, but there was like a lot going on.
Yeah, so don't worry, it's gonna take time, but if you read the notes and you really put effort in it, it'll be fine. So after purchasing a certain subscription, we create and attach the subscription to the user entity. Sure, we increase the like quota to reflect their privileges. Okay, store some counter updates. Okay, so then for something like this, like quota and load quota. Just say, hey, why is this attached to the, I guess I see why, actually, no. Okay, so then in the, okay, yeah, I guess this is fine. I'm trying to figure out the best way for me to describe this.
Okay.
Okay, trade-off. Yeah, the best way to describe it is trade-offs. Why is this attached to the user, not the subscription? It's like if I tested you and it said, hey, why is this attached here over anywhere else? I think that's a good way to do it on your own. Of course, like in an actual interview, you have someone to help you, right? But as an exercise on your own, why here over anywhere else? Why is this the best?
Okay. I think I might have probably have written it down here. Well, one thing, like to answer your question, I could also answer now. Like the reason why I don't attach it to the subscription is because not every user has a subscription. So a regular user still has its own like quota and load quota. And the other reason was because I decided because I'm doing that whole async loading, and I don't sync so each time a user swipes, I don't sync that call because that's going to be a lot of updates to the DB. And so I keep it on the user, and that way like the front end components could kind of keep track of that state. Sure. And every now and then it would do that load or like sync with the backend.
That's fine. It'll do the sync, but then it's like are you going to attach the number of likes that they've already consumed to the user as well?
So the quota is basically going to. Sorry, I think quota wasn't a good word, but quota here is something that's more like a counter that gets decremented and decremented as users swipe. So the front end is a way that when that quota hits 0, we no longer display more users for that user to swipe.
Okay, I see. Yeah, then I would call it like likes remaining and loads remaining, to be honest. But
okay,
it's fine. Okay. It's fine. I understand. As long as you can provide a good justification for it, then it's fine. And what the point here is to be able to defend your points. Why is this the best decision over anything else that you could have done?
Okay.
Of course, this is a very difficult exercise to do by yourself. You know, poke holes in your own thinking because it's it's the whole reason why we have the Dunning-Kruger effect. So it's really important that you get people to help like poke holes in it. So don't worry too much about this. As long as you're like doing your best to try and poke holes in it and defend it, then it's all good. Switches their location. We need to update user info for backend. Reload the list of matches. Like Quoto was saying, otherwise users can abuse it. Good. You're thinking about like how users can abuse this feature. Good. Okay, I like this. Like add replicates, load balancers. You might be read heavy versus write. Well, actually, you're probably 1-to-1 read write. You know, because if you're reading a list of users, you're going to be swiping. Every single swipe is a write.
Yeah, but on top, I also mentioned that's where I mentioned about the counter updates. If we go up to this point here, I kind of made the decision that I don't want to make a write to DB every time a user swipes, because that will be a lot.
Okay.
And so that's why I passed the whole like quota and load quota, and so like the front end would periodically sync with the back end, and this also allows the front end to kind of allow the user to do this when the user is offline, but then obviously the user won't be able to load new data. But then like the front end will still kind of keep track of that state, and once the user goes back online, we can now sync that information back to the back end.
I get it. So you're basically talking about batching the likes.
Yeah. So yeah, the state, the lights and the whole swiping, yeah, pretty much.
Okay. And then I would say you might run into a really weird condition based on the design that you propose. So let's suppose the user has like 10 swipes remaining, right? Let's say, for example, right, he swipes 10 really, really quickly, right? Then our system, let's say he swipes 11 or 12 really quickly, right? And the system has had time to process it, right? So then let's say he swipes on a match on the 12th swipe, right? Even though he had like 10 remaining.
Yeah.
So then our UI would say, hey, you've matched, right? But then in the back end, it's like, well, you're not allowed to swipe on this user because you've already met your quota. Do you think that imbalance might happen?
Sorry, with 10 users, how did he get the 12th swipe? Actually, I don't understand
let's say that you have 10 swipes, right? Oh, actually, no, I see. You would have the UI limit them.
Yeah, and UI limit, and I also, if at the first point, the backend will serve a list of preloaded users. So it's like, say I load like 50, and then when it gets below half of it, say 25, I load more to it. But then the front end is still keeping track of the lights remaining, or quota in this case. And so when that is used up, even if the user swipes pretty fast, because we are not making a call to the backend every time, we don't wait for the DB to respond. We can just kind of keep track, like we can just update the counter. And when the counter hits 0, we can just stop showing, and we can then do the async batching sync with the backend.
Okay, I'm fine with this. Yeah. As long as you're thinking about like the user stories, the different user scenarios, what they can. You see like how I proposed a scenario, like what happens if the user does XYZ.
Yeah.
As long as you're thinking about that and you're really trying to like say all the different ways the users can abuse the freaking scenario, then this is perfectly valid. And so like if you can think about these things, and in order to really test, I think this is perfectly good. In fact, I would also even go as far as to say, hey, like what happens in XYZ scenario, just for your own purposes.
Okay.
And just write it out. It might be long, it might be very tedious, but I think, like I said, like once you write it out and you become super detailed about it, I think you'll begin to appreciate the details of like actually designing something like this. And I think that if you send it off to someone else to get it reviewed, I think they will also appreciate that you put so much thought into it. As long as every single word means something, then I think they'll be okay. Like, of course, they'll be like, oh, why is this so long? But then I think that also part of them will appreciate that, hey, you are really trying,
Okay.
So I don't have a problem with like your homework right now. I think the way you're approaching it is fine. Just saying, all I'm doing right now is saying, hey, think about like the levers that change when you perform X, difference to your product, think about how it scales in the future, and then really think about like all the different ways the user interacts with it, because ultimately when it comes to a product, the end user is driving the interactions.
Okay.
Any final questions before we switch gears?
Yes, actually. So I'm still going to I guess, how do I phrase this question? I'm obviously going to probably, like, if I do interview FSO, it's probably going to be a product focus. design. Should I like kind of spend more time also kind of researching online to search for more like product focused questions, or should I continue to also do what I'm currently doing for the classic system design stuff?
I would say focus a little. I would say that's a very difficult question.
Yeah,
I would say at the very least know how relational joins are done
yeah,
and what the difference between SQL and NoSQL is. Other than
okay,
that, and like kind of look at some different architectures online of how they structure software. So for instance, like I think if you look at the what's it called Discord, I have a link to like the payment system that Uber uses as the blog post, right? I think that's a very good one. That kind of strikes a good balance between both the front end and back end, like how their different services are interacting with one another. I think those types of blogs are gonna be very good.
okay, okay.
Yeah, those are good. Those are the types of blogs you're gonna want to read. And so I think that getting a better idea and really poking holes into like why did they do this, what could have been done better, etc., etc. You know, and understanding how they did come up with these things. It's all about poking holes in why is this the best solution. So I would say lay off the DDIA for a little bit. We can talk more about it later, but I would say like every single night, find one blog post and go deep into it. Poke holes. Why is this the best? What problem are they trying to solve? Etc. etc. So this is what I would recommend you do. I would still split my time between 80-20 leak code. I think more so 80-20 leak code because I remember last week you had a lot, like you were mentioning that you had a lot of issues, and then I think you mentioned that you only recently switched to EPI, and then you realized it was a total game changer, and then you basically like felt like you almost had to start over.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So it's like, and I don't know if you saw Tuesday's stream, but basically I got really mad at the other guy because he wasn't doing everything I asked in the doc, and then he was wondering, and he didn't really take the whole process seriously of being able to answer every single question. So I'm going to say that to you as well, just as a warning, so I don't have to say it again. Make sure that your attitude is to be able to answer any question at any time, and to not be satisfied until you can get to that state. So focus on the lead questions. And don't make me repeat myself on things. If you need me to clarify something, send me a message on Discord. But do not, under any circumstance, make me have to repeat myself more than like once or twice. You know, I get if you're gonna miss some details when you're trying to apply it, but genuinely try to apply what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think the helpful part was when you sent us the copy of the other guy's Pablo's doc. I think the most helpful thing there was probably compiling the list of the major advice you mentioned, because previously it was like kind of spread out throughout this like 35-page document, and so I kind of went to like some of the different days we had and like compiled the highlighted ones, and I think that's just more helpful to kind of look at that list before I try every problem.
Good. Share that list with what's it called, K as well if you can.
Okay. Yeah. And okay.
Yeah. And there's plenty of other things in that document as well that you can glean. So for instance, like I even like have this like step by step. One of the first things I tell them to do like is explain very briefly at a high level, like as if you're talking to a 5-year-old child, what your algorithm is. And then think about the base cases, test the design, try to logic each solution. After correcting a mistake, where you can apply the lesson to, create a mental shortcut, time yourself, and then, keep a master list of mistakes and avoid them in the future, I think that should be the mantra of, like, what you guys should be doing. And I'd be very surprised if you guys weren't already doing that.
Yeah, I think the one thing, like, that was surprising, or, like, one thing I didn't really think of was coming up with that mental shortcut that I could kind of utilize for the next time.
Okay. The thing is that when we do these replays, when we do look at our mistakes, we don't want to make the same mistake, right?
Yeah.
So then the question is, well, how do I avoid making the same mistake? Have you been asking yourself that?
Like, I think, like, yeah, I did. And, like, obviously, like, the question that always, I mean, the answer that always comes to mind is, like, no, like, I have to make sure I don't forget that mistake. And when I do try a new problem, like, I have that mistake in mind. But like, yeah, probably like I agree. Like, it's because I haven't done enough of that reverse engineering you mentioned, and so by just continuing to try new problems doesn't really help as much because I didn't dive deep enough like you told me to. So I think that's the one thing that I do plan to tackle on this week and this weekend. I probably won't try a lot of new problems. I probably would focus more on like doing that reverse engineering you mentioned, as well as the API problems.
Yeah, I think both you and him have the exact same issue, so that's probably a more reflection of me not being very clear enough about like, hey, you really need to do the reverse engineering. You need to do reverse engineering. So maybe I need to like really hammer that harder on you guys.
Okay.
Although I feel like I feel like I keep saying that though. I don't know why. Yeah, I feel like I usually do. Like I always say that, but I guess you know I'll make that a stronger point in the future. But basically that means that okay.
Yeah, I think it's like I know you mentioned a lot of times, and it's like often like, from a high level, it's like pretty clear, like, okay, I just got to go back and like reverse engineer this and think from the back end. You do provide some details, but I think what would have been like a little helpful was like kind of going through a example of like, okay, this is how I would reverse it
I think
and
I have
stuff.
a few videos on that actually. Didn't I send those
Oh,
videos to you?
No, you did not.
Please don't. I swear to God, if I find, I'm gonna be pretty mad if I say
What?
YouTube. Okay, I did not send those videos. Okay, I probably sent it to Kay then. Let me pull up.
Okay. Yeah. Can you send those to me so I can take a look as well?
Okay, I should probably. Yeah. Okay, I see. Okay, so I'm gonna put it at the top of the page for you.
Okay.
Okay, and then I'm gonna say, yeah.
It's the four links, right?
Yeah, 4 links. So I give you two examples. Like I do 2 problems, and then I show you like, hey, here's how I'm doing my analysis. Here's how I'm looking at this, and here's like what are the mistakes I need to avoid. Although these are actual sample answers from other clients, and I use them as if I was doing that I own, And so I talk to them about like I talk through it as if like I made a mistake. So I recommend you watch those videos.
Okay.
Okay, so so in the future I'm gonna need to. Looks like I need to keep things a little bit simpler for you guys. I think you guys have the exact same issue. Okay. Okay, so do you have a replay for me?
No, like I mentioned, like I had to work overtime the past few days, so I was only able to cramp in the homework.
Okay, that's fine. I understand. Things happen.
Yeah.
So let me actually look at your study schedule then.
Okay.
So if now that you understand this, I think we are probably delayed by about like now that I understand exactly what's going on. This case sheet. I need to get your sheet. We're currently delayed by like 2 weeks, I think.
Okay.
Let me look at your study schedule. Okay. So, I mean, you also had that vacation, which didn't help either.
Yeah. Would you say like for like Facebook's interview, would you say like second week of December would be okay? Second or third week of December?
For phone screen or on-site?
Potentially on-site.
I mean, if you do really well and you can hit like 11:27, let's say like let's adjust this to 11:27. Hold up, let me strike through this. So we're gonna move it up to 11:27, and if you can really like the super optimal scenario, it would be second week of December. Like 12, like let's say 12:12 or 12:15. This is like super optimal scenario, I think.
Okay.
It's really important that you adopt these mental models, and you really learn from your mistakes.
Okay. But one thing I do not need to worry about if I were to do Facebook is that I believe they don't ask DP questions.
Okay, yeah, then don't focus on the DP, but I still want you to try and incorporate a lot of these like things that we talked about into the like the reverse engineering process. I really want you to really incorporate that and focus on that. If you can do that within the next let's say next week, and it looks good, then I think you have my blessing to move up the interview. But until then, I really am very conservative right now about like your progress. Like I feel like we've stalled out for like 2-3 weeks, and that's not a good sign. So
Okay. I also just added the Amazon on-site date on there,
okay,
but there's no system design for Amazon
it
on-site.
doesn't matter. Your problem is actually still the Google, not the Google, but the data structure and algorithms.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely no. I get your point of the importance of the reverse engineering.
Yeah. Okay. So I want you to. I think that if the Pablo document helps you a lot, I want you to really like. You saw how detailed he was with this, right?
Yeah.
I want you to be as detailed. I want you to follow that strategy on top. Explain like your 5, draw it out, then go for go for it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And make sure you bulletproof test it. I don't think we talked too much about testing, too much.
Yeah. We didn't talk much about like bulletproof testing. I think like the most of the time when we talked about testing, it was just more like testing testing with examples. And I think like one of the first or second session we did talk about briefly about like when to test it. But yeah, I don't think we went very deep into testing specifically.
Okay, so I'm gonna mark that for next week. Talk about testing. It's a very easy topic, but it's very hard to execute on as well. And you'll see like plenty of times in this in Pablo's document, I was just like, hey, you gotta test, you gotta test, you gotta test. It's like, it took him at least 2-3 weeks for him to really get it. And this is him working really hard. So I really want you to like have that relentless attitude towards yourself. Like think, why didn't I get the answer? How can I get the answer in the future? I'm not happy that I don't get the answer. Or how can I get it faster? What can I do? Like just be super obsessive and relentless towards yourself.
Okay.
Okay, you got it?
Yeah, got that.
All right. Is there anything else I can help you with?
No, I think those are good. I think the main question was the confusion approaching system design, but I think like you mentioned, yeah, I was just probably trying to focus at 2 things at the same time.
Okay, yeah, just focus on one thing at a time. Right now, I would say your priority this weekend is data structures and algorithms.
Yeah,
Okay,
for sure.
Cool, sounds good. All right, I guess I'll give you time back.
Okay, yeah, same to you. Have a good one.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Recording.
Okay. Sean says apparently Facebook has been asking a lot of high frequency questions lately. Yeah, I mean, I think intervals is like one of the things that they really like asking for data structures and algorithms. But I guess since the number of people are dropping, I guess I'll sign off for tonight, unless there's any final questions. But yeah, thank you all for watching. We're gonna have another session tomorrow, 9 p.m. So yeah, I hope you guys will join us for that. I'll probably start the stream a little bit earlier as well, so I can answer any questions that might be happening. But until then, you know what? Have a good night. Thank you all for watching.